how did Natalia get here? And you know what? It's actually been a really, really long journey. In some sense, there's parts of it that have been sad and devastating. There's other parts of it I've had the best time of my life. And the goods definitely outweighed the bad. I have had the best time of my life. But it started at around 14. I always knew that there was more to life than just this. And I was driven a lot about wanting to, you know, go further than what my mum and dad did. My mum and dad made some huge sacrifices. They're not from this country, they're from the Windrush period. So, you know, what they put up with in terms of having a better life was all for me, my sister and my brother. So I've always known from really young that I'm gonna be different. I've always been very inspired by shows when I was younger, like the Colbys, Dallas, Dynasty. And I think what resonated with me was the wealth, was the fact that they would still sit down at a table together, and it was very still family orientated, and the business element of it, and it was just the life that I wanted. I wanted to be able to be successful, but be able to help people on a really wide scale and elevate myself as well as my family. So I think that's always definitely been my driving force. But what happened is that as you're growing up, what I looked like wasn't resonated in the shows that I watched. It wasn't a representation. I never saw me. I never saw anybody that looked like me in the shows that I'm watching and the books that I'm reading. And that sparked a really big interest for me around about the age of 16 to 18. So I wanted to find out more about myself. You know, who is Natalia? I wanted to know that question myself. Where did I come from? And, you know, there's a lot of key things that happened in my life. I remember being in the school library. So, you know, if you come back with me, we're talking about a good 25 years. Wow. And I'm sitting in the school library, I'm looking at books, just books from ceiling to floor in my school library. And then it hit me. None of these books, none of the people on the covers of these books, none of the topics of these books are a representation of me. And at that moment, that's when I realised what my first business was going to be. I realised I wanted to create an online bookstore. Books that sold A to Z categories that would help people understand who they were or where they came from. And at that stage, I started to read a lot of books about slavery. Where my parents are from Jamaican descent, obviously that's where I'm going to go back to find out where I am. And then as I read these books, they started making me really, really, really angry. And I realised that this emotion isn't helping me get forward. But I tell you what it did do. It taught me that if you have got people like Harriet Tubman, if you've got people like Martin Luther King, if you've got people like Rosa Parks, the list is absolutely endless. Malcolm X, it goes on. We've seen films and biographies. If anyone that resembles me can go through all of that and get through it and make changes and have films and books and have a legacy after they've died, I can do this. So I think that driving force is what made me realise I want to make my own income. I want to create and build my own wealth. And that is where Natalia was born. But then it became a journey of failing my way to success. So after graduating marketing, after going through years of never understanding why do I get so many bad grades, no matter how hard I try, it just felt like clearly I'm not an academic. And then I found out I was dyslexic, but in my time that didn't really mean anything, and I don't really think it meant anything to me back then as well, other than yet another obstacle to have to get over. So after graduating, going into the corporate world, and then having to understand who I am as a woman, and then now I'm in a workplace where it's not just understanding about who I am as a woman, I'm now having to understand what it's like to be a black woman in an environment where, again, there's not many people that look like me. So by the time my early 20s come, I'm starting to notice a pattern here. And a lot of people kept telling me, you know, you need to work harder than everybody else to prove yourself. But it just didn't resonate with me. If I'm a woman, why should I have to work 50 times harder than any other woman just because of where my parents came from and the colour of my skin? It didn't make sense to me. So at that point, that's when I thought, right, I'm throwing in the towel. I've graduated, I've done my 3 years in the corporate world in media and marketing. You know what, it's time for me to do this for myself. So with my bad girl attitude, which is what I had back then, I thought, right, I'm gonna set my own business up. And that's what I did. I set a company up called Passionate, and it sold an A to Z of black books that would inspire, elevate, and give knowledge back to people like myself that could not get that information readily. You know, one of the sad and disappointing things at this age that I'm at now that I do struggle to get my head around is why my history isn't documented. But that's another post. So after setting Passionate up, no one could tell me anything. I've got this big bad girl attitude. As far as I'm concerned at this point, my ancestors are people like Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks and Malcolm X. So now, as far as I'm concerned, how could I fail with ancestors like that? So I went all in. I've set this business up, and I really do think I'm the director of Amazon. I really do think that I am, you know, going to be the next big thing because I just know it all. And I think that is one of the problems about when you're younger. It's really strange when you're younger how automatically that you think you're a knower, when really at that age you should be more open to being a learner. And I would definitely say that that was one of my mistakes. So I've gone in steaming ahead. I've pumped everything into marketing, thinking I'm going to be the next multicultural Amazon, and I lost everything. I was very fortunate. The financial market when I was 21 isn't what it is now. You know, in those days they were giving away 100% mortgages. They would even pay for your 5% deposit. The bank didn't do half the checks they did now. So I actually owned my first property at the age of 21 in Zone 2 London. I couldn't even afford to buy a box in Zone 2 London anymore. So at that age, being in that type of environment and with the property market rising meant that I created wealth through equity in properties. So I took money from that property, I bought another property. So when I started my own business, I thought I was the girl. I had a sports car, a convertible, and I was up my own, you know what. So with that, I'm pumping all this money into marketing, but the return investment isn't happening. So I'm just in a sinking ship that's got holes. And I'm sinking deeper and deeper and deeper. But I'm just burying in my head in the sand because the thought of failure absolutely kills me. Because especially when you're not humble, it's very hard to go to people and say, I've got a problem, if, you know, you appear to be up yourself, which is what I was. It's something, there's a great learning curve for me, something that I learned the hard way for sure. So my first business, I failed my way to success and failed miserably. I ended up not only losing my business, I lost my 2 properties. At that time I actually had 3. So I lost 3 properties. I had to move back home. It was a really, really humiliating, shameful. I felt failure. I didn't want to admit it to anyone. Like, it literally got to a stage where one day I went to the cash point, I put my card in and it didn't come back out again. And there was just nothing left. I had to tell staff there was no job. I had to move all my items out of my office. I then had to find storage. I didn't even have money to pay for the storage, so I ended up throwing half my office contents and flat tents away. I had bailiffs knocking at the flats of my door. So, you know, some of you might have heard the expression, who knows it feels it, and it's something that I can't even articulate. And at that time, I would have said that is the absolute end of the world. There's no way I can come back from that. And the worst thing ever, guys, is I borrowed a lot of money personally. So I now had £80,000 worth of debt, and that was not included in what I owed to the bank and credit cards. So I told off to the courts one day thinking, right, I'm gonna just file bankruptcy. They told me to file bankruptcy I needed £500. Sorry, I have to laugh. Because if you're bankrupt and have no money, how have you got £500? And it was a lot more then than it is now. So thank the Lord, because God works in mysterious ways, I didn't get to file bankruptcy. I tried to go back to work, that didn't work. And then I thought, you know what can I do? And that's when I realised, you know what, I've got really good administration skills, I'm a good communicator, a cleaning business is really, really low startup costs. And I tell you something, that took me down a peg and 2 and made me humble. So I created a cleaning business where I was literally, hello Natalia, Essex County Cleaners, and then turning up to someone's door with a mumble in my voice because it's the same person they're spoken to on the phone, but I don't want to let them know that not only am I the business owner, I'm also the cleaner. So in a period of 8 months, I then wasn't cleaning anymore. I was 2 stones lighter though. I'd lost a lot of weight. If you do want to lose weight, cleaning's a sure way to go about it because it's labour intensive. And from there, I then had staffs, got an office. The office building I was in, there was a security firm in there. They landed a client who needed a cleaning. It was a national contract, and I bagged that national contract. I was able to pay all the money I owe people back, and that's how I got myself back on the road of understanding that, okay, I am an entrepreneur. You know, understanding that I can admit it, I can own it, and it's time for me to start going on my journey of finding my passion. Because at that time, I wasn't doing my passion. I was a slave for myself. I might have made money. I might have understood how to grow a business organically from grassroots, but it wasn't my passion. In fact, I'd started to hate it. You know, it just felt like no one ever called me with nothing nice to say. Either cleaners didn't turn up or the client was shouting at me. I then went on to have children. So my first son that was born with complications meant that I physically couldn't do this job anymore with a national contract and raise children. So what could I do that suited my children's lifestyle, but I still had that entrepreneurial spirit? I didn't feel like being a mum defined me. So from there I thought, okay, you know what, I'm going to go into coaching. I feel like I connect with people well. In my career, in my entrepreneurship journey to this point, I've met a lot of people that were talking to me and coaching me and acting as consultants when actually they'd never owned their business before. And it kind of just hit me. It's kind of like being an antenatal teacher and you've never had children. So I decided that I really would love to get into coaching, but as I got into it, the more I was getting clients and doing work, it was just such a saturated market. So I learned lesson number 1 of business. Do not operate in a saturated market. It's what I call bloody waters. If you're going to operate in a market where there are so many different fish and sharks, all you're doing is sharing the market share between you all. You're not creating more customers, you're just sharing what's already there. And then from there, I thought, right, I don't like the fact that I'm just a coach. I'm an entrepreneur and I want to have my own business again. So I decided that I was going to become an e-commerce seller. So I went to China, I bought some candles, and now I had to sell them. I put them on Amazon, I created my own store, but then nothing sold. So then I spent literally 3 years educating myself around all things digital. I mean, I've been to conferences all around the world. I had a one-on-one coach. I invested everything that I had in learning how to sell online. And it's a really strange thing. It actually elevated my career in coaching, but around digital marketing and getting more customers. And that is how Natalia came about.